So we're back on the engine over here, and you have this pipe that comes from the head, and that was giving the AFC boost. We need to remove that, and you can actually take your injection lines off if you need to. I think we're going to be able to do it without doing that. It's just a little bit more diligent fiddling. But since we've already had them off and just put them back on, I don't really want to take them back off again. So we'll go ahead and fiddle with that. We'll save that. Then there's a fitting in the head. I think it's about 7/16. Well, maybe it's half. And there we go. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to go get our other fitting that goes in there. We're going to clean a few things up off the truck and we'll be right back. So here's our fitting for the head. There's 7/16. And then we have to put our AFC housing back on, and that basically just goes down in there like that. This points to the back. And get your foot hooked down in there, just like that. And then we're going to put our screws. Okay, so then we're going to slide our bracket up here and put our other two screws in loosely. And before we lock it down, you'll notice those holes are slotted and this thing moves back and forth. Oh, there we go. Quite a bit. And all the way back, it's more defueled. So typically, you want to be about in the middle. So that's all the way forward. That's all the way back. And then if you find it starts hard, you can move it forward some. If you find it's too smoky pre-boost, you can move it back some. Important to remember that you loosen that one bolt down in the back, down here. A little hard to see or show you on camera, but right down in the back there was one bolt we loosened so we could get that to pivot out of the way. Okay, so the last thing we're going to do here, out here, is we're going to put our fuel solenoid back on, and then the AFC Live assembly goes in the cab. It connects out here with just two pieces of air hose. So we'll show you that here in a little bit as well. But we're going to go ahead and back you up so you can see what we're doing here. We're going to get this back on, get it adjusted, and we're getting to the point where we can put our brakes back together. We're getting really close here. So hold on one second while I get you guys repositioned. So on your fuel solenoid, there's a piece here that goes on the injection pump, and this is adjustable for length. You remember I said we wasn't getting full fuel? So I know that means we got to shorten this up quite a bit. So we're going to back this nut out as far as we can get it. And we're going to put this together and try adjusting it. So we've got it cranked in quite a ways. We're going to go ahead and put it together. And if we have to, we'll just keep taking it apart and adjusting it. Something like that. And then I'm going to see if we're getting full fuel. And you see what I'm doing here is if I hold this down, pulling it all the way up, you'll notice over here I'm watching my fuel, and you see it's not changing any. Before, with this down, I was able to get quite a bit more. So there's off. And you see how now it's changing it some? You see that arm moving when I rock the solenoid down? That means it's a little too short. So we're going to go right there. And I'm going to lock this baby down. And then we have to crank these down, and we have a 10 right there, right there. All right, so that's about it for out here. We'll go ahead and get the AFC Live interior piece in the truck and the lines fished out through, and we'll show you how those hook up. All right, so as we saw, we installed our AFC housing. See, things are kind of buried now. And then you get the black line right here, right up in there. And you see the other one, there's two black lines, two black plastic lines. One goes to the back of the AFC housing, right there. And the other one goes down in here. If you're seeing that? Yeah, right there. Goes right there on the intake, on the head, on the intake side. And then this is our boost gauge in the cab. So that's pretty much it out here for installing the AFC. We did, as you saw, center our AFC housing, and we left the dust cover off the smoke screw so that we can tweak that as needed. We've got our lines run through the firewall along, we just followed our boost gauge in through. So now we got to go inside and mount that, and that will wrap up the AFC. So hold on a minute while I get a couple tools, and I'll meet you in the cab. All right, so we're in the truck, and I'm going to put my AFC Live right here. So they give you this bracket and the two thumb screws and the two metal screws. So we're going to need to screw that bracket to the plastic. And we're kind of got to figure out where we want it. So I'm going to try to set you guys up somewhere where you can watch, and I maybe won't bump into you. Let's see. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of figure out where I want it, like this. And I'm kind of going to just judge it this way. You know, there's my holes. And I think I kind of want it right there. So I kind of want it in line with that hole right there, but back about a ½ inch. So I know that I want it right about, probably right about there. So I'm gonna go ahead and get, now you could pre-drill this plastic, but I think it's gonna go pretty easy being plastic. So I'm not gonna bother to pre-drill it. We'll find out together if that's a good idea or a bad idea. And of course, you'd want to look behind here to make sure there's nothing important back there that you're going to screw into. And cause any problems. In our case, we know we're good. Okay, now we're going to take our AFC live, figure out where we want it. There's 2 sets of holes in our mounting bracket. Just like that. And what we'll end up doing, so we know we don't do anything bad to these lines, we'll probably end up getting some of that sleeve that goes on there. So that's what we got. There we go. I think you guys are seeing it pretty good now. Apologize for the lighting in the cab here. It's just it is what it is. And we'll go through this more in depth as we get it running and get out on the road. But essentially, this is your fuel rate. This is how quick it will fuel. So if you take off from a stop and you see a lot of black smoke, you'd crank this back out to slow that fuel rate down. If you take off from a stop and it's just perfectly clean and it feels a little low on power, you turn this in clockwise to give it a little more power. And this is basically, I don't want to call it pre-boost fuel, but it's before the boost completely builds. As the boost is building, this is what regulates how quick the engine fuels. This knob is your overall max fuel. So this knob is going to be what you'll set, for your EGT. So like if you're hauling a camper, and you're out on the highway, you kind of hold the throttle, put the throttle on the floor, watch your pyrometer come up, and you turn that red knob to dial the pyrometer down into about 1200 or whatever you feel is safe for you, and that will be your max fuel, and that will keep you from overheating the exhaust side of the engine. And in this gauge, actually, it's not a boost gauge, but it's the amount of boost pressure going to the AFC. So now we may be running 35 pounds of boost here, but if we've got this knob turned down, we may only be running 10 pounds of boost here to the AFC, for example. So what this lets you do is, at a quick glance, like when I'm hauling my camper, if I get into this in a hill and I know that, I've got this dialed in to keep me at 1200 degrees, I can look over here and say, okay, 25 pounds of boost going to the, or 25 pounds going to the AFC is where I need to be. So at a quick glance, I can dial that back in, going down the road, instead of having to watch the pyrometer so much. So it's just one of those, it's just another tool in your toolbox. But that's pretty much it on the AFC. There is one more part that I want to show you. I don't exactly know. I mean, I know where it goes, but I don't know how it goes. So they send you this thing right here, and I'm guessing it's some kind of bleed off. It's got arrows on it right there, if you can see those. Yeah, you can see those, I think. The book shows something like this, but it's different, and it doesn't tell you which direction to put it. So I'm going to go ahead and call Power Driven Diesel. My thought process is that arrow you saw right there probably goes towards the AFC. But I'll go ahead and put something right here to let you know what I found out. But I'm going to have to give Power Driven Diesel a call and find out how this goes in there. I'll cut my line and install it. But other than that, that pretty much wraps up installing the AFC Live. Most of it was pretty straightforward. Nothing real hard about it. Getting into the injection pump can be a little intimidating, but it didn't go too bad. So any questions on the AFC Live installation, feel free to give us a shout. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe.